With three major outbreaks, we're still tracking across the country. All of them have cities in lockdown. First, the New South Wales winter outbreak, which is now more than double the size of Victoria's second wave last year. We've got the Victorian outbreak, 5,500 cases. We're getting close to that number at least, and it's currently growing faster than New South Wales wave is. And the much smaller ACT outbreak, 530 cases, but it's proven to be persistent and stubborn. That lockdown is extended another month. Let's step through each of those outbreaks now. Today, the most optimistic day in New South Wales in a couple of weeks. This is the smallest number of new cases in 13 days, and it certainly starts to look like we may have crested over a wave here. So we can be optimistic, but let's not declare that the pandemic is over or anything like that just yet, because we're still seeing some different dynamics in different parts of, well, Sydney in particular. This is the 7-day average. We're still seeing about 1,300, 1,400 cases a day, and we are seeing a little bit of a drop now, but it's concentrated in just a couple of areas, primarily in Cumberland. One of the hardest hit council areas in New South Wales has seen a really significant drop over the past week in terms of the number of new cases. In Canterbury, Bankstown as well, cases are flat, maybe even starting to drop now. And we're seeing flattening in other places like Penrith, like Blacktown, like Parramatta, and maybe some small increases still happening in Liverpool. So overall, that translates to a situation across the LGAs of concern of a flat, maybe starting to drop in terms of the overall trend. Outside of those LGAs, the numbers are much smaller, a quarter as many cases a day on average, but the trend line is still going up. We're still seeing cases growing in Sydney in particular, also in Randwick, and both of those LGAs, they're both areas where their vaccination coverage is below the city's average. So we may have reached, the next few days will tell us really, have we reached a peak in case numbers in New South Wales? Is it a local peak in certain parts of the city, and we're still yet to see a vaccine-aided bending in other parts of the city? That's why we're not truly confident that we're past the worst of things, but hopefully this trend that we've seen for the last couple of days continues and even picks up steam in the coming days. A lot more to be seen there. In Victoria, we've got another 445 cases recorded today, and the trend line there is just looking pretty steep indeed. The cases are concentrated again in the same areas we've been seeing. Hume, the city of Hume, 123 cases a day is the 7-day average, and that's still increasing. In Moreland, we've got cases increasing. In Whittlesea, we've got cases increasing. This is largely still concentrated in the west and the northern suburbs of Melbourne, areas where the vaccination coverage has been lower than the rest of the city, and we are now seeing a more concerted effort to blitz these areas and to try and get those vaccine numbers up, because it looks like, you know, the pattern, the overall trajectory is looking very similar to what we saw in Western Sydney, and they're going to need all of that help from vaccines that they can get, because this virus has become ingrained there. And then in the ACT, well, this outbreak is persistent, isn't it? It's been a relatively flat trend, 22 new cases today, and we only know that 2 of those were isolated through their infectious period. The rest either definitely had some exposure in the community or still being investigated as to their isolation status. That's actually ticked up a little bit in the last couple of days, and so the government has again extended this lockdown. It's now a 9-week lockdown, at least on paper, in the ACT to try and control what is hopefully going to remain a small outbreak, but it's not going away. And the ACT government has basically said it will be vaccination rates and vaccination coverage that gives them the confidence to ease the lockdown in the coming months. But it's going to be a hard slog ahead for everyone in the ACT, as well as in Sydney, New South Wales, Victoria and Melbourne. Really, we are waiting for the vaccinations coverage to pick up, to make its effect known, to see these case numbers go down before we have the confidence to move forward.